Whoa, that was a close call. Hey friends, Ash here. Welcome back to Gents. Hope that you're doing well. Today, we're doing a buying guide for the Armaf Club de Nuit line of fragrances, more accurately, an updated buying guide. Because about a year ago, I did do a guide on all the Club de Nuit fragrances that had come out to that point, and like 2 months after I did that video, Armaf came out with 4 more Club de Nuit fragrances, which means in about 2 months, they should be coming out with 4 more, just to mess with me. So what I'm doing today is an updated buying guide for all of the Club de Nuit fragrances for men for 2023. So I'm gonna let you know in today's video which Club de Nuit fragrance is a clone of which other fragrance, which ones are better, which ones you should really look out for, and the cost for each one and whether they're worth it. I have each one of them linked in the description below. Feel free to check them out down there. And as always, here are a whole bunch of codes. Feel free to use them. But if you're watching this in the future, that lucky scent code has expired and is probably something different. So you have to watch like a newer video and I'll probably have a new code there for that website, I guess. But for right now, that's what they are. Also, feel free to check me out on TikTok at Gents. So we're gonna start off with this one since I already have it out here, Armaf Club de Nuit Man. Yeah, this line got started off with a pretty inconspicuous release. This one you can find for about $24 US, that's for the full presentation, and the pricing that I give you today, I pulled from fragrancebuy.ca. Now, some of these you might be able to find for a little bit less on other websites or a little bit more on other websites, but the prices I give you are pretty close to what you're gonna find them everywhere else, give or take a couple bucks. So around 24 for this one. Now, what is Club de Nuit Man a clone of? Well, it's a clone of Paco Rabanne's 1 Million, the original 1 Million. And all things considered, it's actually pretty well done. You have to remember that when Armaf Club de Nuit Man came out, Armaf had about a 50-50 hit to miss ratio. A lot of the clone fragrances that were out at this time were frankly not that good. They smelled really cheap, very alcohol, chemical forward. A lot of them extremely rough around the edges, stuff that you wouldn't really want to wear sometimes. And a bunch of the clones that came out around this time period, if you sprayed them on side by side with the real deal, you knew immediately which one was which because one of them smelled just so much cheaper than the other. Obviously, things have changed since then. So with this one, it's very warm and sweet. You get a lot of spices in here, especially cinnamon. You have amber, sort of a vanilla feel underneath everything. It's got good performance, so you have great projection here, good longevity, fall and winter time type of scent, both daytime or nighttime use. For $24, honestly, it's a pretty solid pickup. You could argue that maybe you just want to go for the original 1 Million since it's not crazy expensive, or potentially also Halloween Man, which is another inexpensive fragrance that has similarities to Paco Rabanne's 1 Million. But for the price point, 24 bucks, this one is solid. It's a nice alternative to 1 Million. But that didn't really kick the line off in a big way. No, it didn't. You know what fragrance is coming next. It's the granddaddy of the Club de Nuit line at this point. Club de Nuit Intense Man. Yeah, that one. So this right here, this fragrance is pretty much the most popular clone fragrance that has ever been made. You could say that this is the Acqua di Gio of clone fragrances. Or more accurately, you could say that this is the Aventus of clone fragrances. Yeah, that was a bad joke. So Club de Nuit Intense Man, that is a clone, of course, of Creed's Aventus. Obviously the most well-known one on the market. You can find this for under $30, typically gonna be in that $28 range. And when I'm quoting you these prices, unless I say otherwise, it is for the exact same size, 105 mils. Why did they not make it 100 mils? I don't know, they just wanted to give you 5 extra. I guess 5 extra is better than 5 less. So yeah, around $28 for this one. When it first came out, it was an eau de toilette concentration. Now the one that you're gonna find everywhere is an eau de parfum concentration, but I wouldn't get too worked up about that. The eau de toilette, the eau de parfum, essentially the same thing. So when you look for Club de Nuit Intense Man and it says EDP, and maybe you heard it was an EDT before and you start getting all worked up, not a big deal. Don't worry about it. So the one thing that gets harped on over and over about Club de Nuit Intense Man, the standard version of Club de Nuit Intense Man, is the opening. The opening to some people is a bit off-putting. So you have citrus in there, most specifically lemon. A lot of people get a ton of lemon off the top here. There's also bergamot, pineapple, and black currant, so a lot of different fruits in the opening here. And to some people, the open is just a bit too harsh, too synthetic. Some people will call it a bit of a lemon cleaner smell. I do think that as you get used to it, that it doesn't smell that harsh, but especially the first couple times, maybe it may be a bit rough for some people. Where I've smelled it so many times, frankly, the opening does not bother me at all anymore. I think it smells fine actually, but I do understand where it can be a bit, again, rough for some people, especially when you compare it to the actual Aventus. Now, as it dries down, it gets way smoother, smells much better. You get this birch that comes in, gives it a bit of a smokiness, which frankly you can also pick up in the opening. And it's got this great sweetness as it dries down. It smells more similar to Aventus as it does dry down. And in the air, this is a monster compliment puller. It also has great performance as well. So all those things combined are why this is so popular. It smells a bit like Aventus. It's got great performance. It's a compliment beast, especially in the air, and it's a great bang for your buck. So Club de Nuit Intense Man, this one, 28 bucks, is it worth it? Yeah, I think so. Now, I'm not gonna delve into this deeply, but if you want to, there's such a rabbit hole you can go down with Aventus clones. There are so many like factions out there, you know, where there are people who are like, Aventus is untouchable, every other clone is crap. And then you'll have people saying, no, Club de Nuit Intense Man is light years better than Aventus. Modern Aventus is so overpriced, the performance is lame, it's weak. Club de Nuit Intense Man will get you noticed more. It's just a better fragrance overall to wear nowadays. And then you'll get other people who are like, L'Aventure from Al Haramain is better than Club de Nuit Intense Man, or one of the other 50,000 Aventus clones. But if we just leave it to this one and ignore all that other noise, for $28, it is an insane bang for your buck for a versatile fragrance that people in general love, especially in the air. Because let's be realistic, even though the opening may be a little bit off-putting for some people, how many people are gonna be around you when you spray this on that are going to immediately rush up to you and stick their nose on your arm or wherever you sprayed and be like, hey man, that's a little bit too lemony for my taste. Not many, I would guess. So you're pretty well safe with that, I would say. Also, I don't own it right now, but Club de Nuit Intense for women, that one you can get for about 21 bucks. And that is a Tom Ford Noir de Noir clone, so keep that in mind in case you want that. Let's keep it moving though. We've got a lot to talk about, like Club de Nuit Intense Man. Again, what? So this is Club de Nuit Intense Man Parfum. That's right. If you go to your fragrance discounter of choice, you'll see Club de Nuit Intense Man 105 ml bottles, sometimes 150, but then you'll see Club de Nuit Intense Man Parfum. This only comes in the jumbo size, which you see here, 150 milliliters, so you get a bit more. This is quite a bit more expensive than your standard Club de Nuit. This is going to run you around $52. So if you want to really overly simplify it, this is about 25 and this one is about 50. So this is roughly twice the cost of this, but you get 45 more milliliters in this, I know. So CDNIM Parfum is essentially what you would expect. It takes the opening of Club de Nuit Intense Man and it does dial down the harshness a bit. It's a little smoother. It's not quite as forward with that birch. So what that means is you get a little bit more of the fruitiness that comes through, maybe slightly sweeter, and just overall a bit of a smoother product. Though some people would say that the original, the non-Parfum, is gonna have a little more push to it, a little more projection, but Club de Nuit Intense Man Parfum is still a great performing fragrance, so for me, it's really a wash. So between the two, which one is better? Well, it's kind of a hard question to answer. Overall bang for your buck, the original is better. If you just want the higher quality product, the Parfum is a little better, but it's not something where it's an astronomical divide between the two. So it's just dependent on your wallet, kind of. And also if you want a little more projection or you want a little smoother. But that's not the last Club de Nuit Intense Man. No, there's also the limited edition. That's right. So we have CDNIM Parfum, CDNIM limited edition. Yeah. So this is the most expensive one, $63, but it's not in the larger size. It's in the standard 105 ml size. And out of all the Club de Nuit fragrances, this is the priciest one as of now. You do get a slightly better presentation. It comes in a nice box with a little bow on it, which ultimately doesn't really matter, but you do get that for whatever that's worth. It has a different coloration, so you have this kind of gray color instead of the black color on the other bottles. And it says at the bottom, limited edition eau de parfum. Now I will say, in terms of just straight up fragrance quality, the scent quality, I think limited edition is better than both of these. This is still an Aventus clone. The opening is a bit less lemony, more pineapple-y. So it has more freshness off the top. It is smoother than both of these. I know I said this is smoother than that one. This is smoother than both of these. It is not as smoky, not as powerful with that punch, but it still has very good performance. So between the three, the one that I like the most personally is the limited edition. I think it's the highest quality, but it is also the most expensive, and I think it is the worst bang for your buck between the three. So do keep that in mind. If you just want the absolute best smelling Aventus clone that Armaf has done, I think it's this one. If you're just after something that's inexpensive that will get you compliments and last forever, just get the original. It'll serve you really well. If you want to split the difference, get that one. And if you just don't care about that other stuff, you just want the highest quality, the smoothest one with the least abrasiveness to it, then that's this one. Now we go to Club de Nuit Urban Man. This is the cheapest Club de Nuit fragrance by a pretty decent margin. So we go from the most expensive to the cheapest. This one you can find for around $18, so less than 20 bucks. So why would it be that this is so inexpensive? Well, in my opinion, it is very clearly the worst Club de Nuit release. So if you wanted to avoid any of them, this would be the one to avoid. At the price point that it goes for, under 20 bucks, it's not a complete failure. Armaf does have fragrances that smell worse than this one, but it just feels like a release that doesn't really need to exist. So you could look at this one, the original, and say, oh, it's cloning 1 million. Not really a fragrance that I think needs to be cloned necessarily, but that makes way more sense than this one, because this is cloning Mr. Burberry, and not even doing a fantastic job at that, I would say. So it's blue fragrance-esque, you know, it's in that neighborhood, but with a more aromatic kind of tinge to it, and frankly, it does smell fairly cheap. I mean, I know it's under $20, so it should smell cheap, but yeah, it doesn't punch outside of its weight class like some of these others do. I think that unless you're just collecting the entire Club de Nuit line, you can pretty much mark this one off. You don't need it. If you really want Mr. Burberry, just buy Mr. Burberry. It's not that much more expensive, but it is much higher quality. It's not great. Let's go on to some sunnier days with some of the other fragrances. Next up, this one, Club de Nuit Milestone. So this one you can find for around $31. It is a clone of Creed's Millésime Imperiale, hence the gold color and the name Milestone, which Milestone, Millésime, they both have M-I-L-E in them. Good. Oh, and an S. And another E. Maybe it's closer than I thought. So with this one and the next one that we're gonna talk about, it seemed like Armaf was basically using the Club de Nuit line to clone popular Creed fragrances. Because of course, these three here are Creed Aventus, kind of bookended by random designer clones, but it seemed like that was the direction they were going, which we will soon see it was not. But as I said, this is a clone of Millésime Imperiale, and I will say a fantastic clone of that fragrance. It has this great salty fruitiness to it, a very appealing sweetness in here. It doesn't quite capture as much that Creed ambergris fuzziness that you'll find across a lot of their fragrances, but it does a good job at overall getting Millésime Imperiale into this bottle for about 30 bucks. I would say right now that this is probably your best bang for buck Millésime Imperiale alternative on the market. Absolutely amazing for spring and summertime, really good daytime fragrance and good performance as well. So Milestone, is it worth 30 bucks, 31 bucks? Absolutely. That's really good. And I would say just in terms of the quality of the fragrance itself, that this is gonna be up there toward the top of the Club de Nuit fragrances. Well, really this one and all the ones that we're gonna talk about up next, because they do just keep getting better. So the next one is Club de Nuit Sillage. This one you can get for about 30 bucks. So it's really close to the price point of Milestone. And these two in my mind are kind of linked because they're both Creed clones. They came out not too long after each other. So Sillage is a clone of Silver Mountain Water, obviously from Creed, as I mentioned. And it's another really good one. This is gonna be one of the first fragrances people mention to you when they're talking Silver Mountain Water alternatives or clones. A lot of Silver Mountain Water clones came out before this one and still more afterward. Interestingly enough, it was one of the more cloned Creed fragrances. Really, to me, it was basically Aventus and Silver Mountain Water. Those were the ones that got copied the most. Green Irish Tweed a bit as well, but you could find a lot of Silver Mountain Water alternatives. And a bunch of those, frankly, smelled quite cheap. They would be too harsh with the metallic feel that Silver Mountain Water gets across, that inky kind of metallicness, and it would just end up smelling very harsh, abrasive, off-putting. So while there are cheaper clones of Silver Mountain Water out there than this one, most of those cheaper ones are gonna have more of that metallic punch. This one has that reined in. It's not as aggressive. It does have a nice bit of sweetness. That sort of tea feeling that you get from Silver Mountain Water is here. It's got a nice classy edge to it as well. Sillage is just as well done as Milestone. So both of these for the price point, they're worth it. So now we're finally to the 4 new ones that have come out, and we will begin with this one, Urban Elixir, Club de Nuit Urban Man Elixir. So we already had Urban Man, now we have Urban Man Elixir, and you may think, well, this is, you know, a flanker of this, so is it related to Mr. Burberry? And the answer is no. So Urban Man Elixir is gonna run you about $40. And this is a Dior Sauvage type of clone. So keeping with the theme of a couple of these, it's not quite as metallic in the opening as Sauvage Eau de Toilette. It's sort of a mix of Eau de Toilette and Eau de Parfum, so you have a little bit more of that richness like you'll find in the EDP, a little bit more of that sweetness, but it still has a nice fresh pop to it, like the Eau de Toilette. And actually some people will get a little bit of an Aventus type vibe in here, like a little pineapple off the top, kind of mixing with that Sauvage opening. Now it's much more Sauvage than it is Aventus. It definitely leans more toward the Sauvage side than the Aventus side. I say that because actually Sauvage Aventus hybrids are pretty common. There's been a lot of those, and some do lean much more Aventus with a little bit of Sauvage. Some are kind of 50-50. This one is more Sauvage with a little Aventus kind of underneath. So while it will remind you more of like the Eau de Toilette or the Eau de Parfum of Dior Sauvage, there's a little hint of Aventus in there. It's another one that's very well done for $40. It's not quite as good a bang for your buck as some of these others that are cloning fragrances that are much more expensive, like Sillage, Milestone, or Club de Nuit Intense Man, but it still does a great job at pulling attention. It's very versatile, and as you would expect from the line, really good performance also. So it's one that will comfortably work for most everybody, and $40 is not a bad price for a 105 ml fragrance that has the performance and the compliment factor that one does. Next, we go to Imperiale, which out of the 4 new ones is probably the least hyped, I would say. That one you can find for about $41, and even though it doesn't get as much hype, or didn't when it came out, as the other 3 of the new 4, it might actually smell like the most expensive one. So this is a clone of Parfums de Marly de Lina Exclusive, which obviously means it's going to lean much more feminine than all the other fragrances that we've talked about so far. But this one is very creamy, very sweet. It has a great fruity pop off the top. It's got lychee in there, and then rose as it dries down, obviously tying it in with Delina. And it is frankly a fantastic clone of Delina Exclusive. So while a lot of guys may view this as being too feminine for them, the fragrance itself is very well done, and it can make a great gift if nothing else. Then we have the most hyped of the 4 new ones, Untold. Yeah, look at that one. Pretty fancy looking. So this is a bit more expensive than the last 2. It's $47, right around there, which is gonna make it the most expensive out of all of these, outside of the limited edition when you're talking price per milliliter. And this one is a clone of Baccarat Rouge 540 from Maison Francis Kurkdjian. And I probably don't need to tell you that there are insane numbers of clones of that fragrance out there. It's basically the most cloned fragrance on the market outside of maybe Aventus. And as such, it takes a lot to stand out because there are so many different options out there if you want to smell like BR 540. And does it stand out? Well, yeah, it does. With this line, they really haven't missed since Urban Man, I would say. This one is gonna get you that sweet cotton candy floss saffron off the top, just extremely attention grabbing, very well done. And to be fair, BR 540 is not exactly the hardest fragrance to clone and clone well, because there are some out there for like $15 that are surprisingly very good. But yeah, this will basically get you BR 540 at a fraction of the cost. It's really well done. It has good performance. I know, broken record, but the compliment factor is there. It's unisex. Maybe some people would say leaning a little bit feminine, but that really is just dependent on how you view BR 540 as a fragrance. I think it's just unisex right down the middle myself. 47, a little expensive compared to some of the other BR 540 clones out there, but if you're looking for one of the best, then yes, $47 for this is a good price. It is very popular though, and does have a propensity to sell out at some discounters. So if it's sold out, you can wait a little bit, they'll get it back in stock. Stuff sells really like just crazy. People love this stuff. Last but not least, Club de Nuit Iconic. So this one is also about $47. So that's gonna put it right about the same price as Untold. Maybe depending on the store, it might be a couple bucks more, a couple bucks less, but it's gonna be right in that range. And you can really see what they did with these last 4 fragrances. So they basically took 2 scents that women love, the Lena Exclusive, Baccarat Rouge 540, and then 2 fragrances men love, Dior Sauvage with a little Ventus flair, and Bleu de Chanel. That is maybe a little bit boring, like maybe you would hope that they would do something else, but they basically cloned the 2 biggest blue fragrances, really the 2 biggest fragrances period for men nowadays, with these 2. So Iconic leans much closer to just being a straight up Bleu de Chanel eau de parfum type of clone. Whereas this one, Urban Man Elixir, you could say there's a flash, a little sprinkling of Aventus in there. This is pretty much Bleu de Chanel. So with this one, you're gonna get that very appealing opening, sort of ginger and citrus. You've got that modern, fresh, woody dry down with a little kick of incense. Extremely versatile, easy to wear. It's an anytime type of fragrance. Big compliment puller, as frankly, a lot of these are. Club de Nuit Iconic, you could maybe argue, you know, spend a little more and just get Bleu de Chanel. You could say the same thing with Urban Man Elixir, but Bleu de Chanel and Dior Sauvage are really never discounted. So you're gonna have to spend at least twice as much, actually a little bit more, to get Sauvage or to get Bleu de Chanel in a similar size, especially if we're talking the eau de parfum. So really, out of all of these, the only ones that I would caution you against potentially are Urban Man. I don't think that that one's worth buying. Maybe the original Club de Nuit, you would just go for 1 million, or Halloween Man, but it's not a terrible buy. And then pretty much all the others are totally worth it. So there we go. That's the Club de Nuit line as it stands today for men. These 4 were really sought after when they came out. So I'm hoping that whenever they do drop some more, that they're as good as these, if not hopefully a bit better. And I'm intrigued to see which fragrances they try to emulate next. I wanna thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys later.